The air inside the grand chamber of Cordic Prime shimmered with heat from the defense grid above, a silent halo of power pulsing across the black spires of the capital. Obsidian walls reflected the pale green light of the planetary shields, turning the room into a cathedral of arrogance. The Empire's banners hung motionless, each one a reminder that the Gorks believed themselves unchallenged among the stars. General Tasser stood apart from the others, his aged frame draped in a uniform faded from too many campaigns. His scales, once a vibrant cobalt, had dulled to the gray-blue of old metal. Thin scars etched his cheeks, each one earned on a battlefield the younger officers now only read about. He leaned on his staff and listened to the voices that filled the chamber, sharp, eager, full of self-assured venom. Commander Vien Varn, clad in crimson armor polished to a mirror shine, slammed his fist against the council table. "We have wasted enough cycles debating a species of primitives," he declared. "The humans resist taxation, destroy patrols, and defy every edict we send. The time for diplomacy is over. I propose total annexation of their colonies. Let them see what happens when insects defy giants." Laughter rippled through the assembled officers. The sound bounced off the walls like a chorus of blades. Tasser said nothing at first. His gaze swept across the faces of those who had never seen real war, officers born after the Empire had already conquered half the spiral arm. He saw ambition, not wisdom. Pride, not discipline. He knew what came next, but he had to speak it aloud. "Commander Varn," he began quietly, "you mistake restraint for weakness. You think because the humans lack fleets the size of ours, they cannot fight. But they can, and they will." The laughter faded, replaced by a murmur of disapproval. Varn turned toward him with the smirk of a predator humoring an old prey. "Ah, the great General Tasser," he said mockingly. "Still haunted by ghosts of your failures? You've warned us about humans before. Yet here we stand, the Empire unbroken." Tasser's jaw tightened. "Unbroken?" His eyes burned beneath the chamber's cold light. 3 cycles ago at Darien 5 you said the same. Do you remember what happened? Varn waved a clawed hand dismissively. "A minor skirmish exaggerated by veterans longing for relevance." "No," Tasser replied, voice gaining strength. "It was a massacre, not of them, but of us." The room stilled. Even the hum of the defense grid seemed to fade. "They were outnumbered 50-1, Tasser continued. "Their ships were crude, their weapons outdated. Yet when we struck their colony, they adapted faster than any enemy I've ever faced. They turned mining drills into artillery. When their weapons failed, they used their own ships as ramming spears. When they ran out of fuel, they siphoned oxygen from our wrecks to keep fighting. They fought not for conquest, but for survival, and that makes them impossible to predict." The silence that followed was sharp. A few of the younger commanders exchanged uncertain glances. Lieutenant Arden, a junior officer seated near the back, leaned forward slightly. His voice was careful but steady. "General, if they fought so fiercely, why were you spared?" Tasser's eyes met his. "Because they wanted me to deliver a message." He reached into his coat and drew a small metallic shard, scarred and half-melted, a fragment of his ship's hull. "They etched this into our wreck before letting me leave." He placed it on the table. Faint grooves formed a line of alien script crudely translated into Gorks. "Do not come again." Arden stared at it, uneasy. Varn leaned over, sneering. "And yet you returned, old man. Perhaps they spared you out of pity." Tasser's gaze hardened. "Or perhaps they wanted you to hear what I now tell you, that if you strike at them again, they will not stop until they reach your homeworld. They do not forget. They do not forgive." A low chuckle rose from one of the admirals. "Such drama," he muttered. "You give these creatures too much credit." Varn folded his arms, his tone dripping with confidence. "We are the Gorks Empire. We have crushed civilizations older and stronger than theirs. Humans are an irritation, not a threat. Once we burn their colonies, the rest will kneel." Tasser straightened, his voice cutting through the arrogance like a blade. "That arrogance will be your downfall. Power means nothing to a species that fights for existence. When survival is all that's left, they become something else, something terrifying. The words hung heavy in the air. Arden's claws tapped the table, a soft, rhythmic sound that betrayed his unease. Finally, Emperor's representative, a silent observer until now, spoke. The Council has heard both sides. The decision stands. The human colonies will be pacified by force. Commander Varn will lead the invasion of New Horizon. The matter is closed. Varn smiled thinly. At last sense prevails. He rose from his seat and gestured toward the holographic map floating at the chamber's center. Within 3 cycles their world will burn. And this time, there will be no survivors to send warnings. The meeting adjourned in a flurry of movement, chairs scraping, armor clinking, hollow laughter echoing down marble corridors. One by one, the officers left to prepare for war. Only Tasser and Arden remained. The young lieutenant approached hesitantly. "General," he said quietly, "do you truly believe we can lose to them?" Tasser's expression softened. "Losing is not the word I'd use," he replied. "You can lose a battle and still exist. What's coming will erase the Empire from history if they are provoked." Arden frowned. "Then why don't we open negotiations?" Tasser shook his head. "Because they don't trust us, and they shouldn't. We've given them nothing but reason to hate us. They will not come to the table as equals, only as survivors. And survivors do not bargain." He turned toward the chamber doors, pausing as he passed Arden. "Remember this, Lieutenant. When the first human strikes back, it won't be loud. It will be clever. And by the time you understand what they've done, it will already be too late." Arden lowered his gaze. "Then all we can do is pray you're wrong." The old general gave a weary smile. "I've prayed that for years." Outside, the great spires of Cordic Prime blazed under the false daylight of the defense grid. Warships rose from their berths like black daggers piercing the sky. Engines flared blue, vanishing into the void, carrying arrogance and doom in equal measure. From a balcony overlooking the launch bay, Tasser watched the fleet disappear into hyperspace. The air trembled with the roar of their departure, a sound that felt more like prophecy than triumph. He reached into his pocket, touching the scarred metal shard once more. The grooves of those human words burned against his palm. "Do not come again." As the final cruiser vanished, he whispered to the empty sky. "You warned them. I warned them. Now only fire will teach what wisdom could not." The light from the defense grid dimmed for a moment, a flicker, brief but undeniable, as if the planet itself shuddered at what was coming. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of their arrogance, humanity was already listening. The twin suns of New Horizon rose over silver towers and crystal streets, their light scattering through the city's upper domes in bands of soft gold. For a moment, the colony world felt timeless. Children raced maglev trams through the market squares, cargo drones hummed over gleaming canals, and the air smelled faintly of salt and ozone. Humanity's newest outpost had earned its name. It was not merely a settlement. It was proof that Earth's people could build beauty even at the edge of the unknown. That illusion shattered at 8:43 local time. The first alarms began as soft tones, a glitch in the orbital radar, perhaps. By the second tone, defense satellites blinked offline. At the third, the sky fractured into streaks of fire. Lieutenant Raina Park of the New Horizon Defense Corps was halfway through morning drills when the siren screamed. She sprinted to the control tower, boots striking polished steel, and froze at the sight on the central display, hundreds of crimson signatures descending from high orbit. The computer tagged them instantly: Gork's Imperial Fleet, 184 warships. "Get me command link with Luna Base," she barked. "Channel's dead," replied a technician. "They're jamming every frequency." Park felt her throat tighten. She'd read about the Gorks. Their doctrine was absolute force, no warnings, no mercy. She stared out through the viewport as the atmosphere lit up with contrails. The bombardment began seconds later. Plasma lances tore through the sky, turning the upper clouds into sheets of white flame. Towers folded like glass. The sound hit moments after the light, a deep, physical roar that crushed the breath from her lungs. The ground shuddered. Windows burst. "Activate planetary shields," she ordered. "Offline. They hit the generator grid first. Then reroute power from." The control tower shook violently as a blast struck nearby. Park hit the floor. The entire left wall vanished in a burst of molten metal. Heat washed through the room like a furnace. When she looked up, half her team was gone, only scorched shadows on the floor where they'd stood seconds before. She forced herself to her feet. "All surviving units, fall back to the underground shelters. Move!" Outside, chaos consumed the colony. Evacuation trams overloaded. Civilians fled through choking smoke. Above them, the Gork's fleet hung like an obsidian storm, raining destruction with surgical precision. On the orbiting flagship Gork's Dominance, Commander Vien Varn watched the devastation from his command dais. The reflections of the burning planet flickered across his armor. "Target resistance pockets and civilian zones alike," he said coldly. "Let this serve as example. The Empire's will is absolute. Colonial fleet reports scattered resistance, minimal effect," a subordinate replied. Varn's lips curled into a satisfied grin. "They call themselves soldiers, yet they run like prey. Burn it all." At his side, Lieutenant Arden stood in silence. He couldn't look away from the live feeds, the screams, the explosions, the frantic human signals begging for evacuation. "Commander," he said cautiously, "the planetary defenses are already destroyed. Continuing bombardment serves no tactical purpose." "It serves morale," Varn answered. "Ours." Arden's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. Far below, in the ruins of Sector 9, Communications Officer Daniel Ruiz crawled from the wreck of his post. His uniform was torn, his left arm burned raw. The city around him was gone, streets split open, towers collapsed, the sky pulsing red with falling debris. He coughed hard, tasting blood, and dragged himself toward a half-buried transmitter. The antenna was bent, its panels shattered, but the power core still hummed faintly. He keyed the manual override. Static filled the air, then a flicker of signal. "Emergency! New Horizon under full assault. This is not an evacuation request. It's a warning." His voice cracked, but he forced the words out. "Tell Earth, the Gorks are here." He hit send. The message pulsed into the void. Then the transmitter exploded, and Daniel Ruiz vanished in the light. 6 light-years away, aboard the USV Yuan, the message arrived as a burst of corrupted data. The bridge fell silent as the AI reconstructed the fragments. Captain Marcus Johnson stood rigid, his steel-gray eyes fixed on the holographic playback. The voice was faint, distorted, but the words were unmistakable. "Not an evacuation, a warning." The transmission ended in static. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Commander Owen Price cleared his throat. "We've confirmed signal origin, sir. New Horizon. Transmission lasted 11 seconds before termination." Johnson's fingers curled into a fist. "Casualties?" "Unclear," Price said. "But sensors show no active beacons left on the surface." Dr. Heath Mercer, head of systems analysis, leaned over a console, his sharp eyes scanning the data streams. "They didn't occupy. They annihilated. That's not conquest, it's a test. They're probing our response time." Johnson turned to him. "Then we give them one." Price hesitated. "Sir, the nearest reinforcement fleet is 6 days out. Standing orders." "Standing orders don't apply when entire worlds burn," Johnson interrupted. His voice was calm, but the edge beneath it was iron. "We strike back now. Small, fast, unpredictable. We'll teach them that humanity doesn't die quietly." Mercer nodded grimly. "Operation Glass Knife?" Johnson's eyes narrowed. "Activate it." Hours later, the Yuan prowled the dark edges of Gork's controlled space. Lights dimmed, systems running cold to mask their signature. Crew moved in silence, a tension that felt electric. In the operations bay, Mercer projected a 3-dimensional map of the enemy's supply routes. Red lines spidered across the void. The Gorks rely on centralized logistics, he explained. Cut the spine, and the body collapses. Their arrogance will be their weakness. They don't believe we can reach them. Johnson studied the map, jaw set. We'll remind them that distance doesn't protect the guilty. He keyed the intercom. All hands. The Gorks Empire has declared war on humanity. They believe we will beg for mercy. They are wrong. Prepare for silent departure. We hit them before they even realize we're coming. The bridge lights dimmed to crimson. Engines whispered to life. Mercer's voice broke the stillness. Once we do this, there's no going back. There wasn't any going back the moment they fired on civilians, Johnson replied. As the Yuan slipped into hyperspace, the stars stretched into lines of cold light. Every crew member felt the same weight settle in their chest, a mixture of fear and resolve. None of them had asked for this war, but all understood what had to be done. Back on the Gorks' dominance, the fleet maintained orbit over the smoldering ruins. Smoke plumes twisted high enough to stain the upper atmosphere. Varn stood before the viewing window, his reflection merging with the burning world below. Let this be a lesson to all who defy the Empire, he said. The humans will learn obedience, or extinction. Arden's voice was quiet. And if they refuse both? Varn smiled. Then they'll vanish. Just like this world. But even as he spoke, a faint pulse flickered across his sensor grid, a signal too small to register as a ship, too precise to be random. It lasted only an instant, but Arden caught it. Commander, he said, there was a brief anomaly on the outer grid. Probably debris, Barnes said, dismissive. Ignore it. Arden hesitated, then obeyed. Yet the unease lingered. Somewhere out there, beyond their scanners, something had seen everything. Something that now knew exactly where to strike. On the Yuan's bridge, Johnson watched as the wreckage of New Horizon faded from his tactical display. They wanted to send a message, he said quietly. So will we. Mercer turned toward him. What do you intend to tell them, Captain? Johnson's eyes stayed fixed on the stars ahead. That humanity doesn't break. It learns. The stars snapped back into clarity as the Yuan exited hyperspace, running dark and silent. Its crew braced for the first move of a war no one had wanted, one that would soon turn the proud Gorks Empire into a pyre of its own making. The void was silent. The USV Yuan drifted along the edge of Gorks-controlled space, its hull lights dimmed, its engines breathing in ghost-like pulses. Every crew member moved with precision, their words measured and few. Humanity's retaliation had begun, quietly, without ceremony, without warning. Captain Marcus Johnson stood at the center of the bridge, his face washed in the pale glow of holographic charts. Before him, the enemy's supply network spread like veins through darkness, thousands of routes feeding an empire that believed itself untouchable. Johnson's voice broke the stillness. They burn New Horizon to test us. Let's show them what happens when we study the lesson. Dr. Heath Mercer's fingers moved swiftly across his console. 3 primary logistics hubs, Tardus Station, Relay 9, and the Cradle Belt refineries. They rotate convoys every 12 hours. Hit 2, the third collapses from the load. Johnson nodded once. How long before they realize we're in their space? Depends on how loud we are, Mercer replied, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Johnson's eyes hardened. Then we'll whisper. The Yuan's strike wings deployed in silence. Small, agile corvettes, ships built for stealth, not spectacle, slipped into the void, their blackened hulls drinking in starlight. Each carried a micro-warp generator and a single purpose, to unmake the Gorks Empire from within. Lieutenant Sarah Feld, commanding the Wraith 3, guided her vessel through the frozen shadow of an asteroid field. Her voice came through the comms, low and steady. Target in sight, Gorks cargo hauler, unescorted. Reading full plasma cores and food stores. Perfect candidate. Proceed, Johnson said. Feld smiled tightly. With pleasure. The corvette eased forward, aligning its magnetic railgun. A flash of light, one silent burst, and the Gork's hauler cracked open like glass under pressure. Its cargo drifted free, scattering into the void like silver dust. Within seconds, another corvette launched decoy beacons across the sector, projecting ghost signals that mimicked an entire human fleet. Mercer monitored the chaos from the Yuan. Their scrambling response fleets to the wrong coordinates. Every false signal pulls them deeper into their own web. Johnson crossed his arms. Good. We'll be gone before they even realize where we were. Meanwhile, on the Gork's command ship Dominance, Commander Vien Varn paced the deck like a predator confined to a cage. Reports flooded in, convoys destroyed, stations dark, crews vanished. He slammed a clawed hand onto the control console. How is this possible? He roared. No species strikes this deep into our lines unseen. An aide stammered. Our sensors, our scanners, each incident is different, sir. They move like... Say it. Like ghosts, Commander. Varn's eyes burned crimson. Ghosts do not kill ships. Find them. From the far side of the chamber, Lieutenant Arden observed quietly, his jaw tight. The reports didn't lie. Human activity was spreading, precise and surgical. And though he feared Varn's wrath, a small part of him, deep, dangerous, and growing, felt a reluctant admiration. They're not attacking for conquest, Arden said softly. They're cutting supply lines. They're dismantling us piece by piece. Varn turned sharply. Do you doubt the Empire's might, Lieutenant? I doubt the Empire's understanding of its enemy. The room froze. Officers looked away. Varn's glare could have sliced steel. Watch your tongue. I'll not have fear infect my bridge. Arden met his gaze without flinching. It's not fear, Commander. It's clarity. Varn sneered. Clarity won't save you when the humans are ash. He turned to his officers. Prepare a retaliatory sweep. Burn every asteroid field, every debris zone. If they hide in the dark, we'll turn the dark against them. Arden said nothing, but he knew what the others didn't. Every torch they lit only made them easier to find. Back aboard the Yuan, Johnson watched the Gork's transmissions with detached precision. The enemy was panicking exactly as Mercer had predicted. The Empire's rigid hierarchy, once its strength, now bound it in chains. Mercer zoomed the holographic map to display shifting supply routes. They're collapsing their own network trying to protect it. The more they react, the less they adapt. Predictable, Johnson murmured. Let's make it worse. He leaned closer to the display. Hit Relay 9 next. But do it differently. I want them confused, not just scared. Mercer's brow rose. Different how? Use their own ships, Johnson said. Within hours, human strike teams intercepted a Gork's patrol vessel. Boarding crews cut through its hull in near silence, disabling power and comms. They seized the ship, reprogrammed its IFF signature, and sent it back toward Relay 9 loaded with explosive nanite charges. As it approached, the Gork's docking officers greeted it as one of their own, until the ship's transponder suddenly split into 12 identical signals. The platform's defenses, unable to reconcile the readings, shut down automatically to prevent crossfire. The explosion that followed ripped through the relay's core, severing communication to 4 sectors. When the data reached the Dominance, even Varn fell silent for a moment. They used our codes, he whispered, disbelief laced with fury. Arden folded his arms. And they'll use our arrogance next. Varn's voice snapped like a whip. Enough! Ready the fleet. If they want a fight, we'll give them one. Send word to all regional commanders, we attack on sight. Arden hesitated. That's exactly what they want, sir. Then let them have it. Varn snarled. We'll drown them in our fire. The Yuan intercepted the new orders within hours. Mercer displayed the transmission with quiet satisfaction. He's mobilizing half the sector to hunt us. That's going to leave their central depots wide open. Johnson's expression didn't change. And when they turn to defend them, they'll already be gone. He studied the stars beyond the viewport, cold, distant, unaware of the slaughter brewing below. Their empire thinks war is a contest of numbers. But war isn't arithmetic. It's adaptation. Mercer leaned back, arms crossed. So what's next? Johnson's eyes gleamed in the dim light. We turn their own doctrine against them. They crush weakness. We'll feed them false weakness until they choke on it. The next operation unfolded near the asteroid fortress of Vask Prime. The humans deployed a decoy distress signal from a supposedly damaged cruiser. When the Gork's fleet arrived, scanners detected wreckage, hundreds of human escape pods drifting silently. Varn, convinced it was a stranded battle group, ordered all guns to bear on the field. The escape pods detonated. Each contained electromagnetic warheads designed to overload targeting systems. Within seconds, half the Gork's fleet's instruments went blind. Out of the haze, the Yuan and its allies struck like precision scalpels. By the time the Gorks recovered visual feed, 23 of their ships were gone. Arden confronted Varn afterward in the wreckage of the command deck. "This is madness," he said. "Every decision you make strengthens them. They learn faster than we react." Varn turned on him, eyes wild. "You think they're clever? They're desperate animals clawing in the dark. When I crush them, you'll see what true power is." Arden's voice dropped. "Power without understanding is suicide. Then die with them." Varn spat, shoving past him. Arden watched him go, the weight of realization heavy in his chest. Tasser had been right. Pride would be their end. Back on the Yuan, the human crews celebrated quietly. Another Gork's outpost had fallen. Another line of the Empire's network lay in ruins. Mercer approached Johnson at the viewing deck. 3 hubs destroyed. Supply lines in collapse. Word spreading. Gork's captains are abandoning patrol routes. They're calling us phantoms. Johnson didn't smile. His gaze remained fixed on the distant glow of dying stars. "Fear is useful," he said. "But it's not victory. Not yet." Mercer studied him. "You think they'll pull back?" "No," Johnson said softly. "They'll do what every dying empire does. They'll gather everything they have for one final blow." He turned from the window. "And when they do, we'll be waiting." Far away, on Cordic Prime, General Tasser listened to the first reports of the campaign. Each one confirmed his worst fear, and his deepest vindication. Humanity had awakened. He whispered to himself, voice barely audible beneath the hum of the council chamber. "They laughed when I warned them. Now they're hearing the echo." The old general closed his eyes. Somewhere, a human captain was writing the next chapter of their downfall. The nebula hung in the void like a wound in space, a swirling maelstrom of violet mist and ion storms that devoured light and bent sensors. Deep within it, the USV Yuan drifted in silence. The crew spoke in hushed tones, every movement deliberate. They were ghosts inside the storm, waiting for the enemy to stumble into their trap. Captain Marcus Johnson stood at the observation deck, his reflection ghosted against the shimmering clouds beyond. "Status," he said quietly. Commander Owen Price replied. "The Gork's fleet entered the perimeter 10 minutes ago. 200 vessels, all in perfect formation." Johnson's gaze sharpened. "Just as predicted." Dr. Heath Mercer, hunched over a console, adjusted the tactical hologram. "They're moving exactly where we want them. Their formation is beautiful, rigid, symmetrical, suicidal." Johnson allowed himself a thin smile. "Arrogance makes patterns. Patterns can be broken." He turned toward the comm station. "Signal all strike groups. We begin when the lead dreadnought crosses marker 7. Price's voice carried a note of awe. "Sir, that puts them right into the crossfield of the False Horizon array." "Exactly." The False Horizon was Mercer's creation, a digital mirage projected across the nebula's electromagnetic currents. It bent enemy sensors, cloned ships, and turned open space into a hall of mirrors. Every Gork's vessel entering the field would see phantom enemies, false distances, and, worst of all, friendly fire waiting to happen. The human fleet didn't need to outnumber the Gorks. They only needed to make them blind. Inside the enemy flagship Dominance, Commander Vien Varn surveyed his fleet's advance through a haze of static. The holographic map on his dais flickered, momentarily showing 3 different readings of their own formation. "Report," he barked. "Interference from the nebula, sir," an officer answered. "Sensors fluctuating, but targets appear consistent." Varn's claws clicked against his armor. "Appear consistent? I want certainty." Lieutenant Arden studied his own monitor. Something felt wrong. The sensor ghosts moved too rhythmically, too synchronized, as if choreographed. "Commander," he said cautiously, "I recommend we halt the advance until we recalibrate the—" "No," Varn snapped. "We press on. These illusions are tricks of the storm. The humans wouldn't dare confront us head-on." He gestured toward the forward display. "Target grid Theta 9 and fire on all readings." The Dominants unleashed a storm of plasma fire into the haze. Dozens of Gork's ships followed suit, lighting the nebula with ribbons of burning energy. Explosions rippled through the mist, but none of them struck human ships. They were hitting their own decoys. Arden's heart sank. "Commander, those are our frigates! You're firing on." "Silence!" Varn roared, though his own eyes betrayed confusion. "Our sensors, these human distortions, correct them now." But it was too late. Within the mist, the Yuan and its strike wings glided between the chaos like predators through murky water. "Targets are firing blind," Mercer said, his voice even. "They're eating each other alive." Johnson watched the tactical map unfold. Red dots blinked out one after another, their own fleet untouched. He gave a single nod. "Now we hit them where they still think they're safe." 3 human corvettes broke formation, diving toward the Gork's rear line where command ships coordinated firing sequences. Their thrusters burned cold blue trails through the violet fog. "Engage disruptor rounds," Johnson ordered. The first volley cut through the haze, striking a Gork's communication array. It exploded silently, scattering molten fragments into the void. The second shot crippled their targeting hub. Mercer's console lit up. "They've lost tactical cohesion. Command signals are fracturing." On the Dominants, Varn clutched the edge of his chair. "Why are we losing signal to the secondary fleet?" "No response from relays 3 through 7, an officer shouted. "Our lines are collapsing." "Then reroute through." Another explosion shuddered through the ship. Warning lights flooded the bridge. "Reactor 3 breached. Deck 12 gone." Varn slammed his fist against the railing. "Find the source." Arden spoke through the chaos. "You can't find it because it's everywhere. They're not fighting us, they're dismantling us." Varn turned on him, teeth bared. "I should have you executed for your cowardice." Arden didn't back down. "You should have listened to Tasser." Varn froze, that name slicing through his fury. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed his face. On the Yuan, the storm of electronic interference reached its peak. Every Gork signal echoed back distorted and delayed, creating phantom fleets that clashed with their own formations. Mercer exhaled slowly. "They're blind. Even their flagship doesn't know which way is forward." Johnson's voice stayed steady. "Then end the confusion with precision. Target? Varn's command ship. Take the head, the body follows." The Yuan advanced through the nebula's glowing fog, its silhouette ghosting between wrecks. Enemy crossfire flared harmlessly in the distance, chasing false echoes. The Gork's Dominants loomed ahead, massive, scarred, but still armed. "Lock disruptor torpedoes," Johnson said. "Aim for propulsion, not destruction. I want them to see who did this." The ship trembled as 2 torpedoes launched, weaving through the debris like serpents of light. They struck true. The Gork's flagship jolted, engines sputtering, fire spilling from its flanks. Mercer's readings flared. "Direct hit. They're crippled." Johnson turned to Price. "Open a channel to broadcast." A technician hesitated. "To them, sir?" "To everyone." The transmission echoed across the sector, human voice cutting through static and smoke. "This is Captain Marcus Johnson of the United Systems Fleet. You destroyed our colony. You slaughtered civilians. You believed fear would keep us quiet. But fear is your weapon, not ours. We're here to remind you, humanity fights back. The message repeated on all frequencies. Across dozens of Gork's ships, the bridge crews froze as the human voice replaced their command orders. Panic spread. Inside the Dominance, Arden stared at the flickering hollow. Johnson's words hung in the air like a prophecy. Around him, officers whispered, their confidence cracking. Varn tore off his headset. "Cut that broadcast! It's overriding every channel!" someone shouted. "Then destroy the emitter!" Arden spoke quietly. "You can't destroy a voice, Commander. You can only answer it." Varn turned, eyes wild. "You think this war is about voices? It's about strength." Arden shook his head. "No. It's about survival, and they've already mastered it." An explosion ripped through the far side of the flagship. Flames surged across the ceiling. Varn staggered, gripping the railing. "All ships regroup! Regroup!" But there was nothing left to regroup. The fleet was a storm of wreckage. Their own fire blinded them. Their calm screamed static. Arden steadied himself against the shaking floor. "Commander, we have to withdraw. The fleet's collapsing. If we don't retreat now, I will not run from prey!" Varn roared, his pride outweighing reason. Arden's voice cut through the din. "Then you'll die as proof of your ignorance." Varn's glare could have burned through steel, but before he could reply, a chain of explosions tore through the upper decks. The bridge lights died. From the Yuan's command deck, the battle unfolded in eerie silence. Human ships withdrew methodically as Gork's vessels drifted, crippled and burning, their once perfect formation reduced to chaos. Mercer watched the last transmission fade from the Dominance. "Their command net's gone. No coordination left. It's over." Johnson exhaled, not in triumph but exhaustion. "No. This was only the warning." He turned to Price. "Begin recovery operations. Get our people back home." As the human fleet retreated, the nebula calmed, the false horizon fading until only the wrecks remained, dark silhouettes against the glow of the storm. Far away, on Cordic Prime, General Tasser received the battle reports. He read them in silence, claws trembling over the datapad. Every word confirmed what he had feared. An empire that believed itself invincible had just been humbled by those it called savages. He whispered, "The humans have learned the art of war from us. But we never learn how to lose." Outside his window, the defense grid glowed over the city like a cage of light. For the first time in centuries, it looked less like protection, and more like a tomb. The Gork's empire had not known silence in 1,000 years. Their worlds hummed with the noise of dominance, shipyards hammering out fleets, war drums echoing from orbital citadels. But after the disaster in the nebula, silence fell like ash. It seeped into every hall, every command channel, every breath. The Empire had met an enemy it could not intimidate, one that struck not with fury, but with precision. On the command bridge of the crippled flagship Dominance, the air was thick with smoke and the bitter tang of burning metal. What remained of the bridge crew worked by emergency light, faces streaked with soot. Commander Vien Varn sat slumped in his chair, armor scorched, pride fractured. His empire's might had turned to debris around him. Lieutenant Arden entered through a shattered bulkhead, his uniform torn, a streak of blood across his temple. He paused, surveying the ruin that had once been the heart of Gork's power. Varn's voice rasped through the smoke. "Report. The fleet's gone," Arden said quietly. "Half destroyed, the rest scattered. Communications are dead across 4 sectors. We're alone." Varn's claws dug into the armrest. "No. They can't be gone. We are the Empire. We were," Arden cut in. The single word struck harder than any explosion. "You should have listened to Tasser," Arden continued. "He saw this coming. The humans didn't fight for victory. They fought to end the question of who rules." Varn's eyes burned with wounded pride. "You speak treason, Lieutenant." Arden met his gaze evenly. "I speak truth. The kind we've ignored too long." Outside the shattered viewport, distant wreckage drifted, hundreds of Gork's warships reduced to glimmering shards, spinning silently through the void. Far away, aboard the USV Yuan, the human fleet regrouped near the edge of the battle zone. The nebula still burned behind them, its colors muted by the scars of conflict. Captain Marcus Johnson stood before the holotable, the blue light painting his face in ghostly hues. Commander Price read the latest data. Gork's resistance is collapsing, sir. Their fleets are falling back toward the core worlds. Intel suggests they're fortifying one last stronghold, the home system. Dr. Heath Mercer leaned over the map, analyzing the sensor readings. They're building a planetary shield network around Cordic Prime. Orbital guns, drone walls, anti-warp traps. They want a last stand. Johnson's tone was measured. Then that's where we finish this. Price hesitated. Sir, with respect, they're cornered and desperate. Any direct assault could cost thousands of lives. Johnson didn't look away from the map. I know. But if we give them time to rebuild, we'll fight this war again in 10 years. I won't let another New Horizon happen. Mercer's voice softened. Then we take the risk. Johnson nodded. Prepare the fleet. We move at dawn cycle. Cordic Prime, the heart of the Gork's empire, gleamed beneath the lattice of its planetary defense grid. The once proud city towers shimmered beneath the artificial sky, but even here, fear had taken root. Civilians watched as warships limped into orbit, scarred and broken. The great spires that had once symbolized dominance now felt like tombstones for a dying empire. In the High Council chamber, General Tasser stood before the surviving ministers. His old eyes swept across the room, faces pale, postures stiff, the illusion of control evaporated. You called me a relic, he said quietly. Now you ask what must be done. One counselor hissed. The humans are monsters. They'll burn us all. Tasser shook his head. They are not monsters. They are what we made them. He turned toward the central display, the human fleet approaching like a line of cold fire against the stars. I warned you that they would fight for survival, not conquest. And survival cannot be defeated. Not by pride. Not by power. Then what do you propose? Another counselor demanded. Peace, Tasser said simply. The chamber erupted in protest. Peace? With those savages? Tasser's voice rose above the clamor. Savages? He slammed his clawed hand on the table. You saw what they did to our fleets, and you still call them primitive? They outthought us, outmaneuvered us, and spared more lives than we ever have. That is not savagery. That is discipline. That is purpose. Silence followed. Finally, Tasser turned to the comms officer. Open a channel to the human flagship. The officer hesitated. The Emperor forbade. Then the Emperor's silence has doomed us. Tasser interrupted. Do it. The Yuan emerged from warp with the human fleet at its back, hundreds of ships moving in calm formation. The view of Cordic Prime filled the forward display, a world wrapped in blue shields and bristling with guns. Enemy defenses are online, Price reported. Massive firepower, but their targeting patterns are chaotic. Looks like desperation. Johnson studied the readings. They'll fight until someone makes them stop. Then the comms officer turned. Incoming transmission. It's a Gork's frequency. Price frowned. From Varn? No, sir. From someone identifying as General Tasser. Johnson's expression changed, cautious, curious. Put him through. The screen flickered to reveal Tasser's scarred face. His crest drooped with age, but his eyes burned with clarity. Captain Johnson, Tasser said, his voice steady. You've proven what we refused to believe. The Gork's empire has fallen by its own pride. I cannot change the past, but I can offer you this, end it here. Spare the civilians. Spare what little remains worth saving. Johnson studied him for several seconds. You're not speaking for your emperor. I'm speaking for those who will die if you fire, Tasser replied. And for those who already have because we didn't listen. Johnson's tone stayed calm but cold. Your people killed billions. Do you think words erase that? No, Tasser said quietly. But maybe restraint will. For a moment, the bridge was silent except for the low hum of the ship's engines. Mercer stepped closer. Sir, he might be telling the truth. The Empire's finished. If we push them further, we'll destroy the innocent with the guilty. Johnson's jaw tightened. And if we walk away, they rebuild and do it again. Tasser spoke again, softer now. You can destroy us, Captain. But if you do, you become us. The words landed heavy. Finally, Johnson exhaled slowly. Transmit this to all Gork's frequencies, he said. They'll hear us once, and only once. He turned toward the comms. This is Captain Marcus Johnson of the United Systems Fleet. Lay down your arms and surrender immediately. No further aggression will be tolerated. Continue hostilities, and we will end your world. The message echoed across every Gork's channel. For long minutes, there was only static. Then, one by one, the planetary guns powered down. The shield grid flickered, dimmed, and collapsed. Tasser bowed his head. You have your answer, Captain. The war is over. Johnson nodded. Then let it end. He motioned to Price. Stand down all weapons. Deploy A-teams to civilian zones. We rebuild what they tried to destroy. Hours later, the once feared capital of Cordic Prime lay quiet beneath human patrols guiding evacuation ships. Smoke drifted between the spires, mingling with the glow of repair drones. Tasser watched from a balcony as the human dropships landed, not as conquerors but as caretakers. Arden approached him, armor dusted with ash. It's strange, Arden said. I thought defeat would feel like death. But it feels cleaner than victory ever did. Tasser nodded slowly. Perhaps that's because, for the first time, we understand the cost. Across the plaza, Johnson stepped from his transport, his uniform streaked with battle grime. His eyes met Tasser's across the distance. Two soldiers on opposite sides of history, both weary of war. Johnson extended a hand. Let's make sure this never happens again. Tasser clasped it with a heavy, trembling hand. Agreed. They stood in silence as the twin suns rose over Cordic Prime, bathing the ruined city in light. For the first time since the war began, it didn't look like destruction. It looked like dawn.